Welcome to Against the Spread, where us here at Sportsnet make our NFL picks for you against the spread. And considering week one is pretty crazy, and week ones are always pretty unpredictable, we did okay. I'll give us maybe like a B minus. Two game difference between the two of us and a push. So we're just looking for steady improvement as we transfer to week two. How you feeling about what you've seen thus far, Gilo?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely crazy. There were some results we obviously didn't expect, and when it came to the bets, it just like there were some that kind of turned on a dime, right? Like I look at Las Vegas, Carolina. It looked like Carolina was going to have that one, and then they gave up another touchdown to Jacobs. So, it was close. I feel like I probably have gone 7-9 on most week ones, so that's pretty good. But yeah, let's look to improve. Honestly, I don't know that I have any better idea of what most of these teams are coming into week two, though.
Well, that is an amazing segue. That's why you are a professional into our
welcome.
First game, the Thursday nighter. Bengals and Browns, the AFC North divisional matchup, always difficult to predict. This line started at the Browns at 8.5. It's now the Browns at -6. I was surprised by both teams in a real way. Having said that, I don't know where I should lean here. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, I don't know that there's any way that I can pick the Browns at that size of a spread at this point in time. Of course, they played the Ravens, and the Ravens look even better than they did last year. But still, like, you would hope that Cleveland could put some points together, and they scored 6, and the offense had the same types of issues as they've been dealing with, the last couple of years. So given what we saw from the Bengals, a bit better than maybe most expected, and Joe Burrow, he has what we thought he had, right? He's going to make some mistakes, but he's got a lot of upside, and he's going to make plays. And I think the Bengals, in a tough division game on a Thursday night, are going to be able to keep this one close. And it mostly comes down to not trusting the Browns. This is a team I'm actually kind of confident I know what they are.
Yeah, is it crazy to say that I might trust Joe Burrow more than Baker Mayfield?
No, I don't. At this point, not at all.
Heisman QBs, and the Bengals should have won if their special teams doesn't let them down. They're 1-0, and if they're 1-0, I don't think the line is -6. And I was surprised it started at 8.5. I think that's why it's moving. So get it in on it early, because it may continue to move. It's 68% of the public right now with the Bengals. And to me, this is more about the other quarterback and my faith or lack thereof, Baker Mayfield, specifically in a big spot. He's on his 4th head coach in 3 years, and that's not really a recipe for success. So I feel for him, but I also wonder if that's partially because of him. He's got lots of talent around him, and he just hasn't been able to put it together consistently, other than his rookie season when the league didn't have a book on him. So I am going to go with the Bengals, a defense that certainly knows him well. Denver and Pittsburgh is the first Sunday 1:00 game that we'll take a look at. The Steelers, with Big Ben back, are 7.5-point favorites at home. Is that too many points for you to go with Mike Tomlin's team?
Yeah, I think I like the Steelers to win this game, but again, it might be a little too much, kind of like the game we just spoke about. And I think the main factor here for me is that the Steelers on Monday looked a bit behind the ball, just in terms of getting everyone on the same page offensively. Undoubtedly, that defense is as world-class as we expected it to be, but I think the offense is still going to take a bit of time, and they're coming up against a Broncos team that has a really good defense as well. And I think they showed that against the Titans, more of a bend but don't break situations against the Titans on Monday. So I think, given the fact that it's taking a little bit for the Steelers to get on the same page offensively, and the Broncos have a good defense, I think they're going to be able to keep this one close.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers. And Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season in 13 years. And I don't think this is going to be one. I think this is a gimme game for them.
A gimme game?
I think so. I consider this as a survivor. I didn't go there. You'll have to stick around to see where I went. But as as good as the Broncos defense looked and bending and not breaking, if the Titans could make some field goals, they would have been broken a little bit earlier, right? And the special teams is not certainly an issue. No, true, but that wasn't because of necessarily Denver. It was more so because they finally thought that they had addressed their kicking game and going and getting Gostowski, and really it was much of the same in his worst career effort. And so I was less impressed, with Denver, than I was, more so impressed with Big Ben and the fact that he's back and the arm looks to be strong. We said, okay, everyone says they're healthy week 1. And of course he's saying his elbow feels better than it ever has. But his throw early to the Canadian Claypool, that's a throw that not many people can make, and he's still making it at an advanced age. So I'm pretty confident that the Steelers win this one comfortably. But we shall see. The line has moved. It started at 5, and so again, it's moving in the opposite direction, and I think so for good reason. Another line that's moved, is Buffalo, road favorites going to Miami. This was at +3. Now it's +5.5 for Miami. A lot of hype on them coming in, but not getting much respect at home in division against the Bills. Are you a believer in Bills Mafia and Josh Allen enough to say they're going to win by 6 points in Miami?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the one. This is definitely the spread so far that I feel most comfortable with. I think what we saw from the Dolphins against the Patriots, there's no reason to think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to have any easier a time against a Bills defense that's just as good, if not better than the Patriots one they just faced on the weekend. And they really struggled. Fitzpatrick had a really tough time, 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. They really struggled to put up points and yards against, what is a well-coached defense in New England. And I expect the same. And I think for the Bills, this is probably another game where they could get away with a couple of turnovers like they did against the Jets and still end up winning by a comfortable margin.
Yeah, and the Bills defense looked great against the Jets, and Sam Darnold really struggled against them, and I, again, expect much of the same. I'm actually looking at the other quarterback in this matchup, and Josh Allen, who gave you some glimpses, but also, gave Bills fans a bit of heartache. But if he just watches the tape of week 1 of Cam Newton against the Dolphins, physically he's like, okay, well, I can do that. And I can do that, and we have these plays in our offense, and so I do think, that Buffalo will win, and will win easily enough to cover the 5.5 points. I don't know about the amount of points in this next game. Jacksonville going to Tennessee, who we mentioned earlier, 9 points. It started at -11, which is an opening line that we would see for the New England Patriots with Randy Moss at their disposal. That's a lot of points, considering that Minshew Magic was in effect in week 1. Based on how I'm leading us into this game, it's obvious where I'm going. I just think that's way too many points, and so I'll take those points with Jacksonville. You were pro Tennessee earlier. Are you pro Tennessee enough to say you're comfortable with the 9?
I'm not comfortable with the 9. I mean, this is a perfect example of how wild things can change, not only in the NFL on a week-to-week basis, but especially in a year where we don't know very much. Last week, I think both of us would have comfortably taken the Titans to cover against the Jags, but then we see they actually, might be a decent team with Gardner Minshew and some of the offensive weapons that they have. So, and 78% of the public are taking the Jags. So I'm with them. I think this team is going to have a lot more to give than we probably gave them credit for. And the Titans, they're able to control the ball and they're able to run really well. But from what I saw on Monday night, I'm not exactly convinced that they're going to be able to cover a big spread against a Jags team that, for lack of a better term, is going to be plucky this year. I think they're going to hang around.
I think so too. I think that's great value. I think there's also some real good value in our next game. Detroit goes to Green Bay. The line is -6. I mean, I'll start with my opinion. I think,
Sure.
I don't want to say Aaron Rodgers is back because I don't necessarily know that he totally went away, but he really struggled in terms of fitting balls in tight windows last year. And part of that is because of the lack of separation of his wideouts, where he's 22 of 27 to his wideouts in week one. If Jordan Love was motivation for Aaron Rodgers, so far it has worked. Matt Patricia hasn't worked. Like, is he on the hot seat for the first coach that potentially should be fired? In Jim Caldwell, the year before he was let go, won 9 games. Matt Patricia, in his entire time in Detroit, has won 9 games. I don't think the Lions are going to win. I also don't think they're going to cover. But who cares what I think? What do you think?
I think Matt Patricia is probably the second hottest seat. I think Adam Gase has the hottest seat in the NFL right now. But yeah, I'm also with you. I mean, there wasn't a more demoralizing loss than the Lions lost to the Bears in week one. Like, they were up 17, they blew it in the fourth quarter, and then DeAndre Swift had that touchdown in his hands to win the game with seconds left, and he drops it. And then on the other side, I mean, you've been talking about Aaron Rodgers, being a man who's going to be on a mission this year, and that was the case in week one. You couldn't have been more right, and I think that's going to continue against a Lions team that may find it very tough to get up after what was a devastating loss in week one.
Be a fool for me to argue with you. Everything you said was eloquent and on point, except for one. Wow. I think there was a more demoralizing loss.
Okay, unfair.
The loss of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Maybe
were up
one
early,
more demoralizing loss
against the Washington football team. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Should I cede my time and allow you to talk about this game? The Rams are going to Philly. 1.5 points is the spread. It's really flipped. It started as Philly as a 4.5 point favorite, and now it has them as a 1.5 point dog, and still 70% of the public are with the Rams. Rams looked good in week one. Philly certainly didn't. Their offensive lines were the juxtaposition of good line play. I'll just say I'm going with the Rams. Please, Eagle expert, how do you feel about your team in this line specifically?
Yeah, I don't feel good about the team after week one. I mean, I think they looked really good for most of 2 quarters, and then I think Carson Wentz was feeling the heat and started to turn the ball over, and then everything kind of changed. The offense fell apart. But when it comes to this Rams matchup specifically, the lack of experience on the right side of the offensive line, they had a guard on the right side and a tackle on the right side who both started and had never played in the NFL before, and then had come up against, that Washington defensive line. It's not going to get any easier against Aaron Donald. And so we've talked a lot about Eagles injuries, and it's because they have a lot of them, but I don't think any have been as impactful as the ones that they have right now on the offensive line. And so there's no way that I can conceive them blocking Aaron Donald and finding success in this game unless they drastically change their offensive game plan. So I'm going to take the Rams because until I see otherwise, I just don't trust the offensive line, and then Carson Wentz to be able to handle the heat that's going to come from the Rams defensive line.
Yeah, you got a struggling offensive line, and the schedule maker not friendly. You start with Washington. The only thing that they can do well is rush the passer, and then you get the Rams, who may have the most well-balanced, front four in the NFL. And part of that is just because Aaron Donald is a game wrecker, and we saw against Cowboys, which is a decent offensive line, they just picked on their one weak spot. And put Aaron Donald on one side, you have to double team him, and you're giving isolation on the other side. That is a weak spot. And again, Wentz sacked a career high 8 times. Of his 15 pressure dropbacks, he was 2 of 7 on the times he was able to actually make a pass attempt. But even specifically in the fourth quarter, a QBR of 2.3, not good, not ideal. And
very bad.
Yeah, so I don't think I don't think it's a great matchup for the Eagles where they are right now. It's
probably the worst possible matchup at this time. It honestly is.
Yeah. Tampa Bay, had some maybe surprising offensive struggles in week one, although maybe they should be surprising given, the lack of time and chemistry that Tampa Tom had with his receivers, and the fact that Mike Evans was a game time decision. They get to go against an offense that outside of their tailback isn't as explosive in Carolina. But yet Tampa Bay's favored by 9.5 points at home. Not sure how much that matters anymore, but at home, is this too many points for the 0-1 Buccaneers?
Given the fact that we saw struggles that we maybe not fully expected, but we talked about teams winning the offseason and then struggling. We kind of saw that here. The Tom Brady was clearly not on the same page with a lot of his offensive weapons on Sunday, and you can't do that against a really good team like the Saints. But I think those problems will continue or can continue and be as impactful against teams that aren't as good as the Saints. And so for 9.5, after what I saw on Sunday from Tom Brady, I don't think I can take that spread. I'm going to take the Panthers, who put up a decent amount of points, despite, as you said, having one or maybe two real weapons on offense.
Yeah, Brady hasn't been good, and it's a bit of a trend, which should be concerning. In his last 3 games, he's had pick sixes, which isn't ideal.
That's
but
wild.
he's someone who's always needs some perseverance and looks to bounce back. He has the best win percentage after a loss in the Super Bowl era, 787. Now, part of that is because he's just been on a team that's won more games in the Super Bowl era. So after a loss, after a win, he probably has the best win percentage. But his game specifically in those games, 45 TDs, 12 picks in games after multiple interceptions. I love the fact that Bruce Arians called him out, and I expect him to bounce back in a big way and it to resemble more of the offense that we saw. We barely saw Gronk play, which is another surprising thing. So I could see this one being a blow in favor of Tampa Bay. So I'll take the 9.5 points, even though I may live to regret that.
I think your point about Tom Brady bouncing back is good, but that's also a Bill Belichick stat.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't seen Tom Brady do this without Belichick. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how he bounces back. And like you said, especially after Arians called him out, which was awesome.
Yeah. The Giants 6-point underdogs going to Chicago. Mitchell Trubisky gave us a little bit good, a little bit bad, but the same is true for Daniel Jones in week one. Who do you like in this matchup?
I don't trust the Bears enough to give me a full game of good play after showing just one quarter against the Lions. So I think I'm going to go with the Giants, who showed something on offense, even though it didn't translate. But that was against a really, really good Steelers defense, and I'm not sure that's where the Bears are. And I especially don't think that they have the same type of big play capability as the Steelers do on offense. So I'm going to take the Giants. I don't think the Bears can win this by a touchdown.
You started this by saying, I don't trust the Bears enough. I don't trust the Bears at all. So I will gladly take the Giants specifically in this game, given the spread. Minnesota goes to Indy. This one's a pretty tight spread, -3. Disappointing start for both teams who expect to be in the playoff hunt. Where are you leaning on this one?
Once again, last week I jumped on that Colts bandwagon, and I did it, willingly and excitedly, and then the bandwagon caught on fire, and we all burned. But predictably, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna pick the Colts, and I do this because the Vikings loss was so tough to the Packers. They just got thoroughly outclassed in every way. And the most concerning thing is the play of their secondary with 2 young corners. And Phillip Rivers is far from the perfect quarterback at this point in time, but he will take advantage of matchups like that. And I think the Colts have the capability to bounce back more than I trust the Vikings after what was just a brutal loss to a division opponent.
Yeah, I think these two teams are pretty even, and so in that case, I'll just take the points, and I'll be comfortable with Minnesota keeping it close, and what I think is going to be a field goal game either way. Probably think the same of this next matchup, and if it's a close game, that probably means the Cowboys are going to lose because they haven't won close games in recent memory. They are favored, however, in their home opener. 4.5 points at the spread. They host Atlanta, whose offense looked really good in week one. Where are you leaning on this one?
Well, I would say this is a whole new Cowboys team and offense. This isn't Jason Garrett's Cowboys, but we didn't see any proof of that on Sunday night at all. But yeah, and I think because of that, I'm going to go with the Falcons. I just don't know that the Cowboys offense has that explosiveness that we expected them to have. Maybe that will change against the Falcons offense that gave up a lot of points to the Seahawks in week one, but also the Falcons, as they showed, have the capability to put up big numbers as well. So I think these teams are probably even, and I am going to take the Falcons to keep it close until I see more from that Cowboys offense and what people were saying before the season would be a high-powered offense. I can't pick them against a team that can also put up a ton of points.
Yeah, just 3 points in the second half from that offense, but I'm actually more concerned in terms of this matchup defensively. And Atlanta is going to give you 3 wide of guys who all can run without Leighton Vander Esch, who's out for probably at least the first half, if not 2/3 of the season. With the shoulder injury, you basically you lose your coverage linebacker, and the Cowboys corners and safeties have struggled in man coverage, and so I think Matt Ryan, who can get the ball out of his hands pretty quickly, saw what Jared Goff did. Not a lot of yards per attempt, but kept them on schedule, and I think Atlanta offensively is going to overwhelm Dallas. I don't think either of these next 2 quarterbacks are going to be putting on an aerial display. San Fran going to the Jets. San Francisco 7-point favorites after a disappointing week 1 loss to Arizona. Who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think there are going to be a lot of questions that will need to be answered about Jimmy Garoppolo going forward and whether he's the long-term answer in San Francisco. But I don't think they'll be having those conversations for this game because I just think the Jets are too big of a mess right now. Like I said earlier, I think Adam Gase is probably going to be the first coach to go if they continue to play the way that they did in Buffalo. They just continue to have no offensive game plan, and now Le'Veon Bell is out for a significant amount of time. So there are some questions that need to be answered, like I said, in San Francisco, but this week should be one where they kind of come back to normal and take advantage of a Jets team in peril.
Yeah, I think these are 2 teams that are going to be drafting quarterbacks in the draft. The difference is the Jets are going to be drafting one at the top of the draft, and San Fran is going to be hoping that one falls to them at the end of the draft. And so I think San Fran's clearly the spirit team. If you told me there was a game this week that had a -9 spread, I would have guessed, yeah, maybe it's this one. And so I'm going to take San Fran by a touchdown easily, and I like that. Same number in this next game, and I think it's a bit more reasonable. The Cardinals -7. They are favored over the Washington football team. Two teams who start the year 1-0, which is something, again, I didn't think I was going to say.
Yeah, the division-leading Washington football team.
That's right. Yeah. Who do you like?
So yeah, I watched way more of the Washington football team than I would have liked, and they really are good at one thing, and that's getting after the quarterback. That defensive line is already one of the best in the league, I think. But outside of that, I think they're going to have a lot of struggles this year, and on offense particularly. And based on what we saw from the Cardinals on the weekend, I think this team is going to be able to put up points. Kyler Murray, he is such a dynamic player through the air and on the ground, as he showed. And he and DeAndre Hopkins are clearly on the same page. So that Washington win was a remarkable one for them, but I don't see it happening in this game, and I'm willing to take the Cardinals. I'd even go double digits here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Washington football team, I almost said the former name, showed that, they've got a little bit of fight, that they've got a head coach who's instilled the culture, and that they're certainly fighting for, as he is coaching while battling cancer. I think Dwayne Haskins showed signs that, maybe he is actually an NFL player. But Kyler Murray has given us signs that maybe he's not just a starting QB, that he might be someone who can ascend to the Wilson, Mahomes, Jackson, Deshaun Watson territory, because he has so many physical skills. And now he has a bona fide number one receiver that's going to dictate coverage. So I am going to ride the car hard, I think, early in the year before people kind of wise up on how good they might be. And so I like Arizona. Everybody knows how good this next team is, Kansas City Chiefs, and that's why they are favored by 8.5 on the road in what is a beautiful stadium, but will be empty, as they face the LA Chargers at 4:25 Eastern on Sunday. Who do you like?
I mentioned last week about my reservations with the Chargers offense because of their big play incapability, and that came to fruition against the Bengals. And if you're a team that's going to compete against the Chiefs in this league the way they're playing right now, you have to be able to make a big play. And I just don't think the Chargers have them in it, or have it in them. So we saw on Thursday that the Chiefs can beat you not only with the big play, but they can beat you on the ground now. And so now they're multi-dimensional, more so than they've ever been. I think they're more dangerous than they've ever been. And I think they really take it to the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, I mentioned the undefeated regular season Patriots earlier. I think maybe the closest thing we might see to them in terms of just regular season dominance might be this Chiefs team. I think they're really going to roll people like they're an SEC football team playing an out-of-town or out-of-conference schedule. And so 8.5 is not scaring me at all. I'll take Kansas City with that big number, even though they're going on the quote-unquote road. Another team that I think has the ability just to roll teams this year is Baltimore, and they showed how dynamic they were on offense. Lamar Jackson goes up against another dynamic quarterback in Deshaun Watson. The spread is 7 for Baltimore. It's too many points?
I don't think so. I mean, what a tough start for the Texans. First they have to go on the road and take on those defending champs we were just talking about, and now they go home and they welcome this Ravens team, which, if it was even possible, now come with Lamar Jackson as an even better player, who showed on Sunday against the Browns that not only is he a dynamic runner and one of the best QBs in the NFL, but now he's legitimately become a better passer deep down the field. So I think there's no reason to believe what we saw from a Texas team that's still trying to figure out what they are on offense without DeAndre Hopkins, to welcome a team that knows exactly who they are and are probably better than they were a year ago. There's no reason for me to believe that the Texans can stay in this one.
Yeah, and you mentioned Lamar's ability to throw the deep ball, 9 of 10 on throws of 10 yards or more down the field. This is his 8th career multi-TD first half, the most since 2019. And as much as I love Watson, I just feel like we saw it in the playoffs last year. We saw it in week 1. If he has to get in a shootout with another quarterback, is he capable? Yes. Is his offense, specifically his offensive line, capable? No. And if you're asking him to drop back time after time and make plays and not able to stay on schedule and set things up methodically with a run-pass option, it's not a recipe for success, because he's running for his life. And I do think that's really the difference between these two teams and these two offenses. One is built around their quarterback, putting them in a position to succeed. And when they run that quarterback, they're running him with a purpose. And the Texans, on the other hand, are just running to try and stay productive, but it's not necessarily thought out. And so I like Baltimore in the 7 points is something I'm really comfortable at. In terms of that number, I think it'll be a fun game to watch. I just don't necessarily know how close it'll be.
It should be. I thought the same thing about the Chiefs-Texans game, and the Texans just they just don't know who they are on offense. They have this amazing MVP type quarterback, but really they've got nothing else going on for them, and they just look lost. And I hope they're a bit better on offense this year, because they are fun to watch when they're clicking, or this week, but I just don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, the New England Patriots were fun to watch on offense.
Yes.
It wasn't just check downs to running backs and tight end screens. It was a lot of stuff that they don't normally do. They had the most rushing yards by Patriots QB since 1997. Last year, they're the only team to not have a zone read run, which is like, just even saying that sounds ridiculous in 2020.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They had 12 in week one, and they ran Cam Newton more than he's run really for the better part of his career. But they go up against their Super Bowl foe, the Seattle Seahawks, and the hashtag Let Russell Cook is certainly trending as Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer took off the shackles and really let Russell Wilson cook. Who do you like in this game, the Sunday nighter that has the Seahawks as a 4-point favorite?
This is probably the most fascinating matchup of the week in my mind, because we saw what the Patriots are going to be able to do on the ground if Cam Newton is healthy, and we know that the defense is going to be really good, specifically the secondary, who comes out of the opt-outs and free agency relatively unscathed. But they come up against the Seahawks, like you said. They're throwing on first down. Who are these Seahawks? And Russell Wilson, played one of his best career games. So I think how this matches up is going to be really fascinating to watch on Sunday Night Football. But ultimately, I think the Seahawks are going to have more answers. And the Patriots, while they'll probably have some surprises up their sleeve, will probably just come up a bit short offensively. And so I'm going to take the Seahawks to cover.
Are you going to? I'm actually going to take the Patriots to cover in what I think is going to be a really close game and a fun game to watch. I think this next one's going to be fun to watch, the Monday nighter, only because the Saints, are going to be without their best player, and Michael Thomas, and Drew Brees, even though he got another win against Tom Brady, didn't look spectacular. And the Vegas offense, adding Henry Ruggs and giving them some speed, and Jacobs, looking like a real good runner once again. The Raiders offense looks pretty enticing, and they also have one of the emerging tight ends in the game in Waller. But they are 6.5-point underdogs to the Saints at home. How do you see the Monday nighter playing out?
I think it's a really good measuring stick for where the Raiders are, right? Because they did come off a really impressive offensive performance against the Panthers, but also gave up, 30 points to the Panthers. So where are they defensively? Can they keep that offensive firepower up against a team as talented and deep as the Saints defense is? I have questions about that. And I think, despite the fact that Drew Brees clearly doesn't have the arm talent he used to have in his prime, obviously, I think this team is well coached enough and deep enough to come up with ways to win this game in a pretty convincing manner. And so I'm going to take the Saints, but with an eye on the Raiders to see whether they might be a legit team in the AFC.
Yeah, so every week I look back at the games I picked, the win-loss record, and there's 2 or 3 games where I just kick myself and I'm like, don't overthink it. Who's the better team? Who's more likely to win and thus more likely to cover whatever the spread is? And this is how I view this game. I could talk myself into the Raiders, but I don't want to overthink it. The Saints are better, and no matter where the game is, they should win, and they should win by a solid number. If we were having this conversation, 10 days ago, I clearly would take the Saints at this number. So I shouldn't be dispelled by anything I saw that much in week 1. So I will take the Saints. Having said all that, my survivor pick is informed a bit by what I saw in week 1 in the Cardinals. And so even though I was impressed with the Washington football team, I am still picking Arizona in survivor, because as you try and chart out your entire season, am I going to feel great taking the Cardinals for any of their in-division matchups? Probably not. So this is a good spot. I could get a team done, a nice win early, and still have some of the bigger name teams that are almost guaranteed wins, no matter who they're playing, in my back pocket that I can roll out once we get closer to the end of the Survivor season. And I really want to make sure I get a win. Who are you picking for Survivor?
Well, technically, I am out of Survivor, as I'm one of the thousands of people who picked the Colts against the Jags and then had their hearts broken.
But you bought back in. You bought back in.
I'm back in, yeah. Like thousands of people, I've spent more money to buy back in, and I'm going to go with the strategy of riding the opponents of the New York Jets. That's kind of going to be my early season strategy. So I'm going to go with the 49ers. Like we said, they do have some question marks at quarterback, but I feel like they're a good enough team to be able to take advantage of a Jets team that really has issues all over the field.
Awesome. I like it. Listen, I like and I love this. We love and your interaction, so continue to tweet at us, to like, to favorite, to share, no matter if you get us on Twitter, on YouTube, on sportsnet.ca. Gilo, we are overreacting to a week of football. Like, all is right in the world again.
I love it.
This is awesome. Thanks for this, pal.
Yeah, take it easy.